I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer Podcast, and I'm here with my good friend, David Mason Jr. What's up, man? It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it sure has. Yeah, I've been all around the off-road industry, and I'm glad to sit down with you today.
Yeah, no, and especially coming off a pretty big, finish for you at the Mint, the second place in Unlimited Trucks. Let's talk about that first. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we got the trophy truck at the end of the last year. One of the big reasons we did that and got a two-wheel drive trophy truck is because you offer that class, and we felt that it's something we could move up from class one, and we can get our feet wet with a little bit older used truck that's still competitive, and race your series and sort of get up to speed, get our crew on board, get everything figured out as far as the trophy truck class, because it's a big step from the competitive standpoint and then just the truck aspect of it, from the prep and making sure it's dialed for every single race. And so we went to Parker, had a little bit of issues there. It was really kind of a warm up for us, and then we went to the Mint, and the goal was like, we want to get a top 5. The amount of competition there is huge. I mean, the absolute most stacked field in off-road, and we figured, okay, we just need to keep the truck going. We need to have a good points day and hopefully get in the top 5 against these super, super good racers. And then we hit all of our marks all the way along and ended up second place. So that's kind of early in our career as a trophy truck team to have that kind of success. So it feels really, really good.
It's interesting though, because that race in particular, like, you got to be there at that 4th lap, right? To win or just to compete. And so the amount of attrition is pretty high, so you have to be very patient. But what was that like? I mean, so is that your second race in a trophy truck?
My second race with our trophy truck. I raced with Cameron Steele at the Baja 1000 last year. And that was, obviously it's a giant race. And so jumping in with him was a big deal. We had some good success there, but with our own team, our own truck that we've taken over and we're prepping, it was only our second race as a team.
Nice. Well, I got to give you some respect for that. That's a big accomplishment for race number 2 on your own, is to pull a second at the Mint.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we really feel like it is, especially, running Yokohama tires. They have put so much into developing their tires, and we had just a great race. It was good to come through for those folks, because after Parker, we really saw, okay, we need to step up and make some big improvements to the truck and my pacing and everything in order to be competitive. And we made some very key improvements between those 2 races, and all of them paid off on race day. The other thing too was I haven't raced the Mint in like 10 years. So there was no pre-running of that one. So my first lap was not, let's go bonsai and just go try and run down everybody and hold pace with the leaders. We knew there would be several trucks that were running a super aggressive pace, and maybe 1 or 2 of them would get through, and like Householder obviously did. He had a perfect race and ran well and beat us by quite a bit. But for our perspective, it was like, just get through the first lap at a decent, smooth pace, but don't make any big mistakes, and just kind of warm up to the course as the laps went on, as the course deteriorated, figure out where we would need to push and where we would need to hold back a little bit, and be there at the end. And fortunately, our strategy worked out really well.
Yeah. Well, again, like, that's the thing, is you can come out of the gate and push the pace, but you're gonna have issues, and you just have to be careful. And I don't know how many times there's been an instance where somebody's leading the Mint overall, and they're putting a pretty big gap on everybody, and they lose an engine, or they get a flat, or another part failure, or what have you. Because I think that it's really a race course that pushes vehicles, and it's really difficult to have a clean race at the Mint.
Yes, I would definitely agree. I mean, by the end of that race, the course was obliterated. And I mean, like, a lot of people complain about a rough course and stuff like that. But I mean, you guys talk about it a lot. If you want to be successful at the Mint, you have to conquer the toughest race in the United States. And by the end of that race, I was totally convinced you guys have the toughest race in the U.S. You're going to be pushing all of your equipment to the limit, and your strategy, racecraft, your body, everything, in order to be successful. And so it felt good that we put together a plan not to just go, try and compete at the absolute highest pace, but, let the attrition work to our advantage, and obviously not be a part of it. Hopefully we would finish, and that worked out. So now we're second in points in your awesome series, and we're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's rad. I'm stoked for you. Again, it's interesting because you have to go into this with a mindset of survival, right? And not just survival, but like, you can't be so off pace that, you're going to be in the back. But it's definitely tricky. So your first race in a trophy truck was the Ball 1000 with Cameron.
Yes.
That's the deep end,
Right.
right? Like you have had quite a bit of experience racing in the desert and short course, but still having your first trophy truck race to be, the Ball 1000 is pretty gnarly, and then you race the middle section, which is really technical. Tell us about how that went.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny. I've known Cameron for a really long time because we were battling in Pro Buggy back in the short course days. And so we've been friends, we've been acquaintances, and really hadn't raced together. I'd done some of his rides before because he does some awesome Baja rides on the dirt bike stuff. And so we're buddies, but, and like, I've done a lot of class 1 racing and stuff like that. I have a lot of desert experience, but again, not on the trophy truck and not with his team. And so it took quite a bit of convincing on our end to, get him to believe that I could help perform with him because, in this desert racing deal, there's a lot of factors that come into picking a driver. First of all, there's a lot of competition. In that big long race, there's a lot of people getting pulled for different teams. And then there's the tire sponsor and the light sponsor. So we were both Yokohama guys. We're both Baja Designs guys. And so it made sense that we could team up. But again, he has Monster on board and he has big companies he has to perform for. And so he cannot put anybody in that's going to throw away the race. And so we went testing. And that was really the big thing. It was an audition. And he was really cool about it. He said, don't get in my spec truck here that they use for pre-running. He said, don't just get in this thing and just try and wow me with your pace or anything. What would impress me the most is if you warm up to it, you show that you're smooth and consistent, and then sort of the pace follows. And so I had him drive first, show me, his test loop out at Placer City, and then I jumped in and I did what he said. I really like to try and listen to feedback and coaching. And so he saw that I was implementing the things that he recommended and they were working for me. And so we got done with that initial test and he felt really good about it. And he said, shoot, okay, well, let's get you in the big truck. And then, so I got in his full 1 trophy truck and it has the Fox live valve shocks and everything. And you get in that thing and it has so much power and the travel's so good. You kind of feel invincible. And so we were testing with the lights and everything way into the night. And I came into this big G out roller deal and I had his co-driver Cody Stewart with me and we bottomed out the truck really hard. And it's because I'm used to racing class 1 where you're really careful on those G out type deals.
Sure.
But with the truck, you can hit them so much harder, only there's still a limit. And once you hit that limit, all bets are off.
Yeah, and that's how you find out, right?
Right. And so I felt, pretty confident going into this thing and we fly into this hole, totally bottom out the truck and put it way up on the nose. And it's dark outside. So all you see is the ground and the headlights. And fortunately the truck went perfectly straight. It didn't swap and it came back down. It was okay, but it was this close to catching the front bumper and wadding the truck 4 or 5 days before the Baja 1000. And so we handled that. And I told Cody, I was like, dude, I will never do that again. Now I know the limit. We're good. I'm used to racing my class 1 car where you're very careful about that stuff to not, endo the car. And I said, I can definitely drive a really fast pace and make sure that I will not do something dumb like that in the race. And so at that point, they're like, all right, let's go racing. We're good. And because I didn't want the truck, it would have been a very different story if we had a crash in testing, but pulled it off and we went racing and we actually had a really good race together.
Yeah, I mean, so who else drove with you in that race? You drove the middle section. Who did the front and the back?
So Cameron started and Cameron finished. It was a giant loop race. So he did the first part to mile 262 near El Rosario. I jumped in with my co-driver Malcolm, and we went all the way down to the bottom section of the course, across Fred's tractor trail, up all the way past San Felipe at a mile 600. Yeah. And then he jumped back in and battled through the rain and snow and crazy conditions to the finish.
That was a wild year, in terms of weather and all the challenges really. But that section you drove, I know that section pretty well. There's a lot of really technical stuff in there. So it takes a lot of discipline to kind of keep yourself in check and go okay, there's a lot of corners and, cliff edges and G outs and just anything can take you out. And, what was your experience like doing that section?
Well, fortunately, it was very smooth. We pre-ran for a whole week straight. We did the entire section about 3 times. And for our last run through, Cameron let me run a Spec Truck pre-runner for an entire pull. So it was like 350 miles in one day, consistent, like without stopping, basically almost like the race. Obviously not quite the same pace, but putting all of our notes together to see how they flow, make sure we weren't missing any of our special secret lines, and just make sure we got through it smoothly. And that went really well. And then on race day, it was kind of the same thing. It was very uneventful. I mean, we just got in, delivered the car like a mailman, and Cameron jumped back in. The only little issue we had is we stuffed the front a little bit and tore a couple lights off of the bumper. And we had our crew guys remove the hood so it wouldn't be flopping up. And then that kind of bit Cameron later because it got all muddy. But besides that, I mean, the truck was in perfect shape. He got in. It was still in great shape. They had a weird electrical issue that caused the throttle pedal to give out. So they lost like 2 hours there at about mile 700. And then they just had to take sensors off until it started running. And then they got that fixed in the middle of the night. They were, calling their tech guys and everything and got it going again. So we would have been third, like a solid third overall in trophy truck. But that bumped us back to sixth place because, they were sitting ducks for a couple hours out there.
That's so frustrating. But, it's an interesting strategy for people to understand. Like when you choose drivers to split duties with you, the main driver is looking for somebody who's not going to, wreck the truck, who's going to get it from point A to point B and do it in a clean way, but still stay in competition, right? So it's a hard balance, right? You want a guy who's fast, but you want a guy who's not going to, go out there and wad up your truck, right? Because, that just takes you out of the race. And so it's tricky. So that's really cool that you had that experience, and I'm sure everybody saw it and went, all right, here's a guy we call that's going to, make sure our vehicle survives, 300 miles plus of the Ball 1000. Because, breaking it up strategically is pretty much necessary in terms of how hard everybody's going to have to drive. After 350, 400 miles, you're kind of junk. So splitting it up is really the optimum way to do it.
Yeah. And then there's like super teams now. There's Luke McMillan and Rob McCachran. There's Bryce Menzies and Christopher Favorti. So Cameron, he's looking at that when he has a partner. And then the other thing too is we had to help provide pit support. We had 3 chase trucks go down there full of guys. I wanted to make sure that, okay, I'm not just showing up and driving his truck. I want to help contribute as much as possible to the overall race effort and make it a success, because that's how these big teams do it. Cameron, he has a ton of phenomenal guys on his team, but still not quite enough to do a giant race like the Baja 1000, because that's a one-off deal every year. And so Cameron had to consider that too. He said, okay, well, Dave Jr. has a bunch of guys. He has chase trucks, but we haven't worked together as a team. Sure. And so he had to sort of get us all together, and we had meetings and really got into their mindset behind things and you figure out how to use their fueling equipment and stuff like that, so that there were no issues on the pitting side during the race either. And so fortunately that went pretty smooth. I ended up passing a few people in our section, and my goal was just, I want to deliver the truck in great shape, in a better position than I got it. And that's kind of always my goal, is I'm not going to be the guy who's going to bonsai and go past 10 people and make up 20 minutes on the leader. And like, I can run a really aggressive pace, but for me, my goal is to run a really good pace, that's still competitive and have the truck be in perfect shape when I hand it over.
Was there anything that happened during that race that maybe was kind of an unexpected surprise to you? You're like, oh man, like I didn't expect that.
Yes. Yeah. There's a remote section down by San Felipe, south of town there, where they're just the biggest whoops in all of Baja. I mean, they're unbelievable, 5 feet deep and very close together. And Cameron's truck works really well in that stuff. So we knew that by the time I got all the way down to there, I'll be comfortable in the truck. I'll be warmed up. We can go make up some time on these folks. So we were pushing really hard through that section. We knew that was an advantage we had, even over some of the all-wheel drives, because his two-wheel drive is really good in the big bumps. But we got off, there's all these different lines going all different directions, and we got off on one that that sort of stayed off of the main line for quite a distance, and it wasn't anything we'd seen in pre-running, and it was very fast and smoother than the rest of the line. So we're hauling butt. Again, I'm trying to maintain a really hot pace there. And we came into this section. I see this huge Cardone cactus with a hood, like a torn off hood that somebody had leaned against it. And I look forward, and there are these 3 rollers that are like 10 feet deep. I mean, just I figured our race would be over because we flew into the first one, kind of skipped through it. And then when we hit the second one, all I could do was just completely hit the throttle. And we tried to jump over into the third one, but we stuffed the nose. And it was all silty on that side. So luckily we landed so far up that we clipped the nose, but landed on top instead of just completely stopping the truck. But when we hit the bumper, the seat belts, like I felt an imprint on my body all the way around where the seat belts were, because it was just like hitting a wall basically. And so we landed, and there's this huge dust cloud of silt. I didn't know if we were upside down or not. I didn't know what happened because it's in the middle of the night and we're in blind silt. I didn't know if we were stuck. I didn't know what the deal was, but I had to drive forward so we wouldn't get stuck. We come out of the dust, the steering's working, the hood's still on it. Everything feels normal. Okay, let's keep going. And so we kept going. The truck was okay, but we broke a bunch of the mounts for the lights, not enough to really, slow us down, because he has like a ton of Baja Designs lights on that truck. But it definitely scared the hell out of us because we were on this other line we didn't know. There was a giant danger that we should have, been a little bit more careful with. And we just flew into that thing and almost threw away the whole race. So fortunately we got out of that. We're really lucky, and kept going, and it really didn't slow us down. But we learned, like, if you're not on your main line, especially for an extended distance, you just have to be super careful until you get back on your line where you know the notes.
Yeah, San Felipe is extremely tricky in that, that it has all those lines, right? Because you pre-run, you run your line, and if you're off your line, you don't really know what's coming. And, they also usually have a lot of spectators in that area. Yeah. And they're in the race course, right? So you're looking at that. And then when it's nighttime, did you pre-run at night?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. When it's nighttime, it's disorienting. You look at stuff and you've driven that in the day and you're like, that doesn't look right. So it's like, for me anyways, it's really hard to tell like where exactly you're at, even if you do pre-run at night. I don't know why, but like my memory is better during daytime pre-running than nighttime pre-running.
Yeah. Well, it's because you get those landmarks, when you're pre-running, you could see, okay, there's a mountain over there, or I remember this road coming in that goes out to Percival or whatever. You can have a better basis of where you are. But when at night, all you see is just this tunnel vision of the course, and it's just this winding trail that just goes and goes and goes. So you're right. Like, it's very important to know where you are. And then also, like, you want to look at the race miles and stuff like that too. So, okay, I have a pit in 20 miles, and try and have a basis for where you are, because like you said, it's super disorientating when you're just driving for 6 hours at a time. And you don't get those landmarks of where you're at the whole way.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't think, unless you go experience it, in a vehicle. I mean, you can go out there at night and spectate, but which is honestly really cool. Like, it's one of the things I've enjoyed the most about growing up here and going down to Baja. It's not like a normal race where, you're like, oh, it starts at 9 and it ends at 5 and then you go home. It's like, it runs through the night, and it's fun. Like, even for a spectator to, do the, stay up all night, chase, through the night, go to multiple spots, you're getting little snoozes in the chase truck or whatever, or your own vehicle. And, it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to spectate, I would encourage people to go do it, be safe, obviously, but there's nothing like it in the world, there's nothing like it in the world. I mean, I've known you and your dad for a while. Tell us a little bit about the history, like how you got into this,
Yeah, so my dad started racing back in the 80s, and it was his absolute passion. I mean, he was a carpenter, and all he wanted to do was just be able to race one time, and then he was hooked. He was like, okay, I want to be able to race again. He never had this vision of racing over his whole lifetime and then having a son who would go on and do it successfully over a huge period of time. But it's been his biggest passion throughout his whole life. And so I grew up in it. I was born in 1993, and then going to his races as I was a kid He raced with Danny Ashcraft and Martin Christensen and the Herzog group all through my childhood. And so I got a lot of experience in Baja. They even put me in bilingual school from second grade on because my dad's like, well, if you're going to be a Baja racer, you need to speak Spanish. And so I'm fluent in Spanish, and that's a huge advantage when I'm racing down there. But I've always loved it. I like going down just on dirt bike trips and showing my friends the beautiful places in Baja and stuff like that. I've been hooked through my whole life. And so when the trophy carts were invented originally in 2006, he got one for me immediately. And so I was 12 years old and got into racing that way. I'd done some go-kart stuff, but didn't have much interest in it. And up to that point, I'd ridden quads like my whole life. I was really into, we as a family, we would do that. We'd ride quads, go to Idaho and stuff like that. So I had a lot of experience operating these sort of types of vehicles. And then when trophy carts came out, I mean, it was such a step up from there really wasn't anything like that for children.
No,
so.
it was a game changer. I mean, I remember right when it happened, and Nestor created those, and it completely changed the game because now all the adults racing, their kids could come to the races, and it was funny because I think that I don't think Nestor even had the wildest idea of how many of those were going to be ordered.
Yeah.
And people were like, yeah, give me 4. And he was like, what do you mean 4? And then it was like 10, and, it grew and grew and grew. And it was really cool to see that evolution because it really infused off-road culture with youth. And youth has always been a part of it, but there was always this big step of like, you kind of, you go the races, and then usually when you're a teenager, you might get to co-drive and, kind of step into stuff if you're lucky. So there was a big gap that we were missing in terms of youth participation. So, it was a cool moment in the evolution of off-road racing culture.
Yeah, and everybody jumped into it, because there were a lot of racers in desert and short course doing the course series, and anybody who had a kid from 8 to 15, they got a trophy cart immediately. And so it was like a lot of big name drivers putting their kids in. And it was funny because there was a huge variety of talent among these kids based on the experience they had and stuff like that. So it was funny, like how many crashes there were early on. I mean, every race, there were just spectacular barrel rolls and endos and stuff like that. And then over time, they got radios in the carts and it got a lot more organized. And then, and a lot of the racers who are successful now came from trophy carts because we've gained real experience and good racecraft and strategy like that from the mod carts and stuff like that.
Yeah. How old were you when you started trophy carts?
I was 12.
Yeah.
So it was a perfect time for me, because I did that for 3 or 4 years between Core and then Lucas, the inaugural season. They started in 2009 and then immediately went to 1600 limited buggy, and limited buggy had like 25 cars for each race.
Yeah.
And so that was a giant competitive class. And did pretty well in that. And then I went to Pro Buggy, and that's where I met Cameron Steele because he was the defending champion. And I was an 18-year-old kid with not a lot of respect for the elders of the class. And so I was kind of dicing it up with everybody right out of the bat. And it's kind of funny because Cameron and I, we battled hard on the racetrack, and he didn't like me at first because there was a lot of rapport among the drivers who had been in the Core Series and the Lucas Series for a while. They had a lot of respect and clean racing. And I was a reasonably clean racer, but I came in, I didn't have any of that history. So I'm just competing for podiums. And I'm just absolutely going for it, along with a lot of other young guys who came in around that time when the Ecotech came into Pro Buggy. And so Cameron wasn't a fan of mine because we just always seemed to tangle up on the course. And then the second year that I was in Pro Buggy, he moved out of racing that class and was the announcer. And so he would kind of bag on me, like, he'd say, oh, that Dave Mason Jr., he's consistent, or he's fast, but he's not consistent. He would kind of throw shade at me all the time. And Cameron's an awesome guy all the way, but he had like a little personal vendetta against me because we were just hard competitors. And then my dad had to pull him aside one time. He's like, hey, dude, like, be easier on Junior there. Like, he's just a young guy trying to do his thing. He's not a malicious person or anything. Like, he may not be as consistent or smooth as he wants to be, but he's learning. He's trying to get there and build a name for himself. And you putting negativity on them is kind of hurting our reputation. And that's not what we want. We want to be like respected people in the industry. We just had some run-ins. And so I think Cameron got it really well, and we become friends over a longer period of time. But it's just funny how early on, we the young guys like Jeffrey Cooley and I, there were several young guys who came into the class, and we really kind of shook things up because there was an existing order of things in Pro Buggy, and then that went out the window and these crazy kids came in.
Well, open wheel racing and off-road is really, tricky because, just like other forms of open wheel racing, contact is not a good thing.
Yes.
Because you're going to tangle up wheels, right? Whereas, if you're in a Pro 2 or Pro Light or Pro 4 and you're leaning on people, there's a lot more that you can get away with, right? And so your lines passing can be a lot more aggressive in those trucks, right? In buggies, it has to be really clean, because if you have a guy who's not giving up his position and you're going in aggressively, somebody's going to go.
Right. Somebody's going to catch a wheel and they're upside down.
And then, the crazy thing, is when you're racing in large groups in short course, the guys in front of you are deciding that.
Yeah.
Right. So if all of a sudden those guys in front of you get in a tangle, you're going to get cleaned up in that mess too, 9 times out of 10, unless you can get wide really quick. But if you're on them, it's like you're going for a ride. So I think that, a lot of the older guys had this mentality of like, hey, we're going to race clean. We're going to get around, get all our laps in, and try to not have any accidents. And when you're going for the win, that may not be conducive with your plan, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's this thing of like, being, where's the line, right? And especially in short course racing, because it's not as simple as desert racing. Desert racing, you're like, hey, there's the guy. Okay, cool. We got room to pass. Let's go. I mean, that's a simplified version of it. Doesn't always work that way, but there's ample room to step out and drive by them.
Right. And it's a lot less chance you'll even be in a door-to-door, wheel-to-wheel situation in desert, because it's the staggered start. Whereas in short course, there's 20 Pro Buggies on the track. You're 3-4 wide at times on the course. And it's pandemonium. And I'll be honest, when I was 18 years old, I didn't have the same control or skill over the vehicle that I do now. And so you may not mean to take somebody out, but you hit that mud patch or you try some line, you come in too hot, you make a mistake, and they may be the unfortunate benefit, the person who gets taken out. Sure. And it totally could be an accident, but they're not going to see it that way.
No, and it sucks because if you're the guy in whatever position you're in, but you have somebody come in behind you on the inside or the outside, and you're taking the fastest line, they want to get in that line as well. Something's got to give, right?
Yeah.
And especially in those buggies, because, you would see the in car and it's like, you can't even see that person coming into your back corner. And then all of a sudden you're going for a ride, So I could definitely see both sides of it. And I remember a lot of the Pro Buggy races would have 4, 5, 6, yellow flags, because it would have to restart them over and over because of all the crashes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, oftentimes there'll be like some squirrely guys at the back that are kind of beating and banging, but usually at the front, it's a lot of respect and a lot of, smooth drivers that recognize, okay, if I hit you, it's just as likely that I'll take myself out as you. So I don't want to be dirty. But then, like I said, way back then, these young guys, we had a ton of speed. I mean, we were fast. We could be in the top 3 every race and dice it up, but we just didn't have that precision driving skill yet to necessarily pull off all the passes and stuff like that. So it came over time. I had a run of like 11 straight podiums in my second and third series or seasons that stretched through those years, and we had a great time. And so I'm actually back in Pro Buggy as of last year. We got one to do the Midwest series, kind of just for fun, because I love that class. I know Cameron still loves it. It's just a really genuinely cool class, even though it doesn't have the high horsepower and the big heavy trucks beating and banging like the Pro Buggy. It's a totally different deal with a 5-speed transmission and a clutch and a turning brake. You're doing a lot of different things versus the trucks.
Yeah. Well, when you started getting your wins, what was that like? Because, I mean, you step into this class and like you said, it was the deep end. There were a lot of racers in Pro Buggy at the time that were, had decades of experience in it, and so you come into that class and you're like, okay, there's 20 something guys here I gotta beat. And then, you start getting podiums. What was that like?
I mean, it was a lot of hard work. We have to go testing. We do the regional races in between. And that's Pro Buggy is one of the top classes in the series. It's one of the pro classes. So it was a great feeling when we finally got consistent to where we could get the podiums. But I went like 9 podiums before I actually did get a win. And so for a long time, you're just hoping you can get on the podium. And then when you get consistent podiums, it's like, okay, this is great, but when am I going to get that win? I mean, because a win it's not a little bit better than second place. It's 100 times better than second place. I mean, it's such a big deal to pull that off. And so we pulled our first win off at Lake Elsinore in kind of spectacular fashion. I broke my shock and cleared the finish line. Like I had to send the last jump with no front right shock. I mean, it was broken in half from contact. And so I landed, and it was a hell of a hit for my neck and everything, but we won the race. And
I bet that's one of the biggest jumps that's ever been built in short course.
Yeah,
that tabletop is no joke.
Yeah. I know my dad was spotting for me up in the stands. He's like, well, I don't think he's going to back down. I just hope when he lands, it doesn't hook and roll or something. And luckily it hit the chassis and skimmed and it hurt pretty bad, but we had a lot of adrenaline flowing on the podium there. So huge feeling.
What was that? At that point, did you feel like, okay, I can do this. I can win. I can beat all these guys.
Yeah. At that point, I knew, okay, I'm legit at that point, because you're always thinking in your head, okay, I have good speed. I can qualify first a lot of the time, but to pull off a win, it's not just speed. There's the strategy portion of it. There's the art of racing that comes into it, and to be able to outmaneuver other drivers and do it over the course of a race. Because even a short course race, it's 15 minutes, but the course goes from completely muddy to drier and rutted. And so your setup has to be good through the entire race. And then your driving stamina and stuff like that, and your strategy has to carry through. So winning a short course race isn't just, having some good speed and having a good car setup. There's so many factors that go into it in order to pull it off.
Yeah, I love short course, from a spectator standpoint, because it's, you get to see the entire race and you can see all these, micro battles going down. Right. And, it's interesting because as a driver, I think it's really, really intense because you can't really make any mistakes or your five vehicles are going to pass you. And everybody sees, so you can't get up on the, after the race and you're like, well, I don't know. We hit a G out in the cactus and a donkey ran in, and there's no excuses. It's
right. If you're not fast, you're falling back.
Yeah. It's obvious. It's like, oh, he screwed up there. He screwed up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a really cool form of off-road racing.
Yeah. And it's the most intense form of off-road racing because, when you're in a trophy truck in the Mint 400, you're not racing at 110% very often because your equipment will fall apart. And so in short course, if you're not racing 110% on the edge and still avoiding mistakes, then you're not going to win. The only way you can win is everybody's pushing to the limit, and then you have to come through without making a mistake. So it's kind of a different style of driving. In a trophy truck, I don't like to pitch I don't like to pitch it sideways because you'll rip the sidewalls out of your tires. You'll hook and roll. The trucks are a lot more. They have a lot more weight that you're throwing around. Whereas in short course, you're backing it in the corners and you're driving at a really high level of intensity. And I think for me, that's helped me in the desert because I have the car control to have that touch to throw it around and stuff like that, and late break way in the corners and feel the traction coming out. And then that helps a lot in desert because I can tone it down a little bit, but still be smooth and consistent and comfortable at a pace that is competitive.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question, is if you think the two disciplines correlate, and you just answered that right there. No, I agree. I think, you see a lot of short course racers transfer to desert and desert to short course. And I think it's difficult to go from desert to short course versus short course to desert. I mean, they both have their advantages, but you know, a lot of short course racers come to desert, and they have a hard time with, you know, not pushing super hard out of the gate and going, hey, this is a 400-mile race that I've got to pace myself, right?
Yeah.
Where short course is like from the drop of the flag, it's super intense, 15 minutes of a MMA brawl of off-road racing,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, so you get your first win at Elsinore, you know, then you start backing it up with more wins. And how many more years did you race Pro Buggy before you stepped up to trucks?
So I raced 3 total seasons of Pro Buggy. I got my win in the second season. And so I had a successful third season there. And we kind of felt, I mean, I'd won a bunch of races by that point, got second in the championship, never won a championship, but we felt like, okay, we've kind of done what we wanted to do in that. The short course is tough because it's a ton of travel. It's a ton of crew members going around the country and setting everything up, these giant canopies and semis and everything. And then it's all for 15 minutes times 2 races per weekend. And so it's kind of a lot of work for the amount of time you get into it. And so we thought, okay, let's just take a step back. My dad had started a construction company at that time. And so let's just focus on this thing and get it running smoothly, so we're not like totally killing ourselves on the business side and the racing side at the same time and burn ourselves out. And then we'll come back to it when it makes sense. You know, the company's running smoothly. And so that was 2018. We got into class 10 racing. We got a 10 car. It's kind of like a Pro Buggy, but for the desert. I'd always wanted to race desert like my dad had throughout my childhood. And so we got to race for a couple of years together. We did the Score Baja races, and I would drive the first half, he would drive the second half, and that was really cool. It's kind of a dream of ours to combine our forces and do that in class 10.
What was that like for you, for your relationship with you and your dad?
It was good. When we were in Pro Buggy, it was really intense because I was 18, 19, 20, and I was still a kid. That's kind of how he looked at me, but I was the one doing the prep on the car, and so there was tension at times when, you know, you got the dad, you know, he was bossing me around, and I'm like, well, I'd like to do things this way. You know, when you're 18, you feel like you know everything. And obviously he did know a lot more than me because he had a ton of experience. And so there was tension at that time. But when we came back in 2018, our relationship had matured quite a bit. And so since then, it's just been awesome. We have a lot of mutual respect for each other, and being able to race together. We got a couple podiums back then in class 10, and it just felt great to be able to put all of our combined experience together. It was my first real endeavor into desert racing, but it was fun to do that together as a family rather than just him sticking me in or vice versa. Being able to drive together was cool.
Yeah, well, that transfer of racecraft, you know, that knowledge is pretty important. You know, I see a lot of guys come in and they're not sure what to do. You know, they're asking questions, they're trying to find resources, but when you don't have, for lack of a better term, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi, whether it's your dad or whether it's, you know, somebody helping you run your team that has a ton of knowledge, especially in Baja, because, you know, the technical side of racing in Baja is hard, and there's not very many people who really have it mastered, right?
Yeah.
And so then finding those people is difficult. And then if you do find them, then learning, you know, the whole racecraft of racing in Baja of like, here are the chase roads, here are the entry points, you know, here's where we've got to have fuel and parts. And if you get stuck in this section, you're SOL.
You're on your own.
Right? So there's a lot to it. And even racing in America, it's been interesting for us as promoters to, you know, talk to racers and new racers. And, you know, I remember having this conversation with a guy that called me up and said, hey, I'm coming to race, but I need a pit crew. Do you know anybody? And I'm like, yeah, but like, we don't have that as a mechanism to help people, unfortunately. Yeah. And he just didn't know how to pit. He was all gung ho. Hey, I have a UTV. It's all set. I've been racing smaller races, but I've never had to pit before. You know, what do I do? So it was, you know, it was interesting. It underlined the need for the transfer of that knowledge. So,
yeah. Well, for me, I mean, it's been huge. My dad had a super successful racing career. He won the Baja 1000 a couple times, the Peninsula Run in 2004. with Martin Christensen in Class 10. They were 7th overall in a Class 10 car. And so my dad has a ton of really valuable experience. And so it's cool that I've had the I have some talent in driving. That's a giant part of it. But then I have the aptitude to step up and race in Baja and a real desire to learn and compete in that way. And so it's cool because, some people don't get to have kids, or their sons or daughters are not into off-road racing. For me, it's my dad's biggest passion, and then it's my biggest passion as well. So to be able to combine that and gain his experience, I mean, through my whole childhood, my dad never let a lesson go by, an opportunity to teach me something, whether it's tying down quads or whether it's, pit logistics and stuff like that, or locations. Like, he was always taking the time to teach me all the stuff that he knew, which is a huge amount of experience. And so that's benefited me over the long haul. And now I'm 31 years old. And he's always said, like, the best desert racers are kind of usually in their 30s, because you have the energy and usually the health to go push. You have good reaction time and stuff like that. But I still have a bunch of experience under my belt. And now I know all these different places. When we go down to Baja, or, when I race them at 400 next year, I'll have a bunch of laps around that course. So, it's not a question of, okay, what's up and over this rise? It's like, okay, I can fly this thing wide open, and that's 2 seconds right there, 2 seconds right there, 2 seconds right there. Meanwhile, you're not crashing because you know where the big rocks are and where the tricky spots are. And so it's funny, like, when I was a young guy, I was like, oh no, Dad, I'm fast. I can drive really well. But in order to be successful in desert racing, there's so much more that goes into it, and the experience factor is huge.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's a ton of knowledge. So let me ask you about Martin Christensen, because he's another very intelligent human being and passionate about off-road racing. So did he contribute a little bit to your racecraft?
Yes. Yeah, most definitely. He is a super genius, man, as far as building race cars and thinking through systems and developing these types of things. I was a little kid in his shop when he was developing the AGM jacking system, which every trophy truck has for the most part now, whether it's a Howe or an AGM or a Geyser. They're all using hydraulic jacking systems, and he invented that. And I remember he was putting together one of his prototypes in the shop, and he was going to test the actuation just with like an air nozzle with air pressure, just to make sure it functioned properly and nothing leaked or anything. And he said, he has a funny way of putting things. I mean, he's just a hilarious guy. And he said, okay. And, the way he speaks is very serious. He's Danish, but he has a lot of German sort of background as well. And so he's
mannerisms. Yeah.
Yes. Very, very funny mannerisms. And so he's a very serious kind of strict guy, but he also puts in his dry humor with it. So he's putting together this jacking system. I'm like 10 years old or whatever. And I'm looking at it. I have no idea what's going on, but he's explaining the very complicated systems that go into it. And he goes, okay, now we're going to test the actuation of the system. And since we are not suicidal, we will regulate the air pressure down to 10 PSI instead of 200. And I go, what would happen if you put 200 PSI of air? He goes, well, the jack ram would go across the shop. But it's just funny the way he always puts things. And we're going down to Nora this weekend, and he's helping me and my father-in-law from the crew perspective. We raced a bunch as well. My dad raced with him, but then he's also driven my Class 1 car in more recent times, and we've had a lot of good times with Martin.
Yeah, and I believe he was the only. He was one of the racers that raced and won San Felipe in a Class 1.
Yeah,
right?
Overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably one of the last people to win a major race like that overall in a Class 1 car,
which was a remarkable.
Huge achievement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Martin's a friend, and again, another person I hope to have him in on the podcast, because that'll be a long one, and that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, I recommend it for sure. But like you said, like throughout my childhood, he's a phenomenal mentor to have in my corner, giving me just tidbits of information that he's gleaned over hard work and hard research over a lot of time. I mean, definitely a huge credit to him, because his mind works in a different way than most of us.
Yeah, very technical. So, you're racing Class 10, then you guys moved up. I know at one point you went back to short course racing. When did that happen?
Ironically, that was 2020. So that's when we got our deal with eBay Motors, full-blown sponsorship. And I was going to jump into Pro 2, but Pro 2, the Lucas Series was playing around with the engine rules, and whatever happened, we were going to have to spend $100,000 into this truck we just bought in order to be able to race it and to switch the engine package. And we're like, okay, we're going to hold off on that until they figure out. We don't want to put $100,000 into it and then have to do it again if they make another change down the road. So we parked that thing. 2020, we got a Pro Light. And
but sorry, had you started racing in that, or
just once? I just did the 2019 Cup weekend at Firebird Raceway, and it's just to get our feet wet. And then 2020, we were going to do the whole series with that Menzies Pro 2, and then we decided, okay, there's a lot of money, that we'd have to invest in order to make the right call. We're just going to wait, because they had these steel block 410 engines and then the unlimited race engines. That's what my truck had, and so we would have to convert it in order to compete. We're like, let's just wait through this season and see what happens. So we got a Pro Light, we got the eBay deal, we got our contract signed, and then COVID hit, and we couldn't race anything. We couldn't make content. I mean, we're like, oh man, we're going to lose our eBay sponsorship before it even kicks off, because we can't do what we were contracted to do. But fortunately, they stuck with it, and I did the season in Pro Light. Hated that class. I mean, did not work for my style. I came from Pro Buggy. It's totally different in Pro Light. Those things are very temperamental in the way you drive them. You have to throw them in the corner and be on the gas really aggressively, sliding, but they're so narrow that they always want to tip over. And so I honestly just struggled with that. And we're like, well, why are we screwing around with this thing when we have this beautiful Pro 2? Let's figure out the engine package and go with that. So then 2021, the gas series came around, and I raced the whole series with that and won the championship in Pro 2. It was a lot better in a Pro 2 than a Pro Light.
Yeah. I mean, like the Pro Light platform, it's gotten Frankensteined, right? Like in its original kind of package, I thought it was a lot better. But now it's gotten Frankenstein with different rules and especially engines and so on and so forth. And it's not really what it was meant to be, which was a stepping stone between, Pro Buggy and Pro 2, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Pro 2 is beautiful. It has plenty of horsepower.
It's a big, wide truck. Yeah. They're very low to the ground, so they're very forgiving. You can go off the jump sideways and off kilter, and they just suck it right up. So definitely like the Pro 2 a lot more.
Yeah, and then you like you said, you won a championship in that, and then what happened after that?
After that, so the gas series, it was more of a regional series, not as big as the Lucas series, which shut down after 2020. But then we went to the Midwest short course for 2022. And so that was a whole new learning curve. We switched to a mid-tag built truck because, again, that had the different engine package. And so to run the Midwest, we had to start from scratch. We didn't know even the contacts to reserve a pit space, but let alone track setup and gearing and suspension tuning and stuff like that. And so we were kind of always behind the curve a little bit, trying to get competitive at those races. They have minimal amounts of practice, so you can't go practice, okay, I want to make this change with the tire or the gearing or the setup. It's basically practice, qualify, race. And so if you don't do well in practice, you're not going to do well in qualifying. And then if you don't do well in qualifying, then you're far back in the pack. And then it's funny, later in the season, I got pretty competitive in the Midwest, but they had this invert deal where they invert either the top 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10. And so there were 2 instances where I qualified inside the top 2, and they inverted 10 trucks. And you're not going to win at that point. I mean, if you're starting 10th in a basically spec class with super competitive drivers, you're going to have a bad time. And so that made it quite difficult at that point.
That's frustrating, right?
Yeah. So fortunately they reversed that. They got rid of that after that season. But we definitely had some competitive moments during that season. We got 3rd in the Brush Run Cup race, which was cool as a Pro 2 versus Pro 4 Cup race in the middle of the season. And then we've done sort of onesie-twosie races with the Pro 2 since then. And then this year we're going to do both of the Crandon weekends with the Pro 2. So definitely we're going to go back there early and test and really try and get dialed so that when we come to Labor Day Crandon, be competitive.
Yeah, it's interesting making the transition from a West Coast short course racer, which are smaller, tighter tracks, right, with bigger jumps, and bigger, whoops and bigger obstacles in general. And then you go to the Midwest and the tracks are bigger, longer, faster, and most of the jumps and everything are long and low, right? So it's just a different style of racing altogether. And the guys that from back there, like they have it dialed, right? Like thinking about Crandon and you're like, okay, first you got to be good at that track, get your truck set up correct. Like there's a lot of things to overcome, but then there's these guys back there called the Greaves, right? And they pretty much, live at that track. And then there's a handful of other guys too, but the Greaves in particular, it's like, you're going to have to beat them to get on that top podium. And that's a tall order. You know?
Yeah. It's interesting because I've always raced the West Coast, and there's some very, very dialed teams that are very competitive. But then you go back there, and they're competitive, but in their own arena. Like Keegan Kincaid, same thing. He lives like 5 minutes from there, and he's best friends with the track owner. So if he wants to go try something out, he could basically drive his Pro 2 down the highway and go on the track whenever he wants. And so that's definitely an advantage that we have to try and overcome.
Well, plus his dad, Jeff, who has been successful there for, decades, and the transfer of that knowledge, it's not like you just show up and you're like, let's figure this out. Yeah. You're starting ahead of everybody else with the knowledge and the vehicle setup and so on.
Yeah.
And I think especially for the guys that are vehicle builders that are building their own vehicles, like that part of it too is just critical.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, knowing what every little change makes, because even on our trophy truck and our Class 1 car, we're at the point, the Class 1 specifically, we raced it for 4 straight years, and we're at the point where we're dialing like a half a click on a bypass tube or small preload changes, and maybe making a small tire change or air pressure adjustment, fine tuning down to the finest details. So like other people coming into the sport, you could buy a nice Alumacraft and it's super dialed, but to have the level of refinement that you can gain over years of trying different things in different conditions is hard to compete against. It's the same thing in Pro 2. I mean, these people are just so dialed. The track hasn't changed in 50 years.
Right.
And so they can keep tweaking on little things. They can go to the Land Rush start and practice 100 different run-throughs and see what worked for traction, torque converter, gearing, and see what gets you to the first turn first. Sure. And then still try and have a setup that is going to help you win the race.
No, and weather too. Like, it always rains at Fall Crandon. So it's like you have a, normal dry setup, and then you're like, okay, we're in the mud.
Yeah.
We got to change everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's the strategies, always going to be different. But, having the home field advantage is a big advantage. But, at what point did you move from Class 10 up to Class 1, and what was that like?
Let's see. So I guess it would have been 2021. We got the Class 1 car and went to Vegas to Reno with it. But my first race in a Class 1 car was with Stronghold Motorsports in 2019. And again, like I raced with Cameron Steele, my first trophy truck race, my first Class 1 race was starting the Baja 1000 in 2019. And that's the year that it rained like never before. Oh. It flooded the whole course, and they postponed it one day to make sure the course was actually passable.
And you do not want to be in a Class 1 car in the mud.
No, they're a handful because you have all the weight in the back, and when you get in a muddy situation, they just want to swap out. I mean, you're out of control a lot of the time.
Not just that, but because you have open wheels.
Oh yeah,
those front wheels are just piling mud back into you.
Yeah. So that was another big eye-opening experience. And our friend Don Schultz had hooked me up with that opportunity, and Scott Bailey said, all right, we'll throw you guys in the one car. They knew I had short course experience, so they put me in the start. Usually it's a really dusty condition off the start, and you need somebody who's comfortable driving blind at 100 miles an hour through the tricky sections that they always throw at us at the beginning. In that case, it was battling the mud all the way down the coast, then up over Mike's Sky Ranch, and I handed over On the desert side, the next guy, Jason Dudley, he didn't see any mud because it was San Felipe dust.
Right.
And then Brandon Bailey brought it home. We got second in that race in Class 1.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we got our feet wet in Class 1. I was like, oh, man. My dad raced Class 1 with Martin for quite a while, but the cars have changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah.
With the torque converters and the 40-inch tires.
Yeah.
And they're big, beefy cars now.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. And the Baileys, especially Scott Bailey, has given a lot of people opportunities to get in different race vehicles and supported people, so really cool family, good friends of ours.
Yeah.
They help us out every minute with equipment and so on. So yeah, it's all, that's one of the great things about our culture is we have so many great people within our culture that help people get into opportunities, whether it's driving or putting on races. It's really cool. So you have that experience, and like what was the outcome of that? Were you like, hey, we're going Class 1 car shopping?
Well, not exactly. I mean, we still had to build a team around that and acquire sponsorship. So in 2020 we raced together again. When we went to the Parker 425 at that point, and I drove the whole way in the Stronghold car, and we won that race, which was a stacked field. I mean, your Parker race, same thing. It's a hugely competitive race, and so we won that race, and we were third overall against a very stacked trophy truck field as well. And so we were going for the Triple Crown in that series at the time. So we went to Laughlin, we got third. We went to Vegas Arena, we got second. We had a ton of success there. And I felt really confident racing a Class 1 car at that point. And that's when we kind of went shopping, because Scott's grandson, Maddox, who's a phenomenal driver as well, was coming of age and ready to step up into the desert role.
Yeah.
And so my opportunity there kind of went away. Which happens,
Sure.
I mean, no hard feelings. We had a really great experience, and I'm very grateful to Stronghold to give me that opportunity. But we recognized, okay, we need to get our own one car and go dice it up. And so that was a fun transition.
And so who built your one car? Who'd you go to for that?
It was kind of, we don't really buy brand new race cars. So we always try and find, a good competitive car at a good deal that fits within our budget. And so it was a car that Mike Valentine had. It was a custom build, sort of Desert Dynamics chassis, tabbed out by a guy named Reggie Dunlop, who you may know, who's very good, but he's not a mass car producer kind of guy. And so we got it, and we had to make some changes to get a little bit more wheel travel in the rear. And we've changed quite a bit on it, changed the engine package, but it had a lot of really good components on it. And so we knew whatever we get here, we can modify it to make it our own and make it competitive.
Nice. And is that something that Martin helped you guys with?
He did to some degree, yeah, with the geometry of the rear end and stuff. And one of our crew guys actually fabricated and built the arms. But yeah, Martin at that time, he was pretty instrumental, because we were fresh in that car, and he can look at things and just go, okay, we can cut weight here, we can add little gizmos. I mean, if you see his pre-runner, he has all kinds of little things. He has a little for taking notes. He has a little pull out. It's like kind of like a cutting board almost that you can write on. And you push a button and a pen pops out, and then he has an electric pencil sharpener over here. I mean, like, he tweaks out all these little cool things. And so when he looks at a race car, he does the same thing. How can we make it as reliable, lightweight, and functional for the driver as well? Because driver comfort's a big deal on a long race.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting you bring up the whole note-taking thing. Did he kind of train you in his style of note-taking? Because it's very different, right? Like, his style of note-taking came more from the rally side than the off-road side.
Right. Yeah. So the way he's kind of transferred his note-taking technique to me is, I race with his co-driver, Malcolm Mitchell, now, because Martin's not racing so much. He has a successful business. So Malcolm has been my co-driver this year in your series in our trophy truck. And he's a little bit older guy, but he's super smart and super has great ideas with this stuff. And he's totally versed on the rally style note-taking. So the detail of the notes is huge. I mean, he wants every single turn to be identified. And we try to pre-run everything like 3 times. So we can look at it initially. Okay, I think that's a left 3. Okay, I want this note here. I want this for speed and stuff. And then we run a little bit more speed and make modifications. And then we try and run it at a pretty good pace to make sure everything works before the race. And so the amount of notes we have is probably substantially more than most desert racers.
Yeah, it was interesting because that was after talking to both him and Armin Schwartz, who when they won San Felipe in a Class 1 car and beat all the trucks, that was one of the keys to it was their notes, right?
Yeah.
Like they had gone and taken meticulous notes and they knew exactly like where they could push it and where they couldn't push it.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty significant, remarkable win for that era. And really the last time a Class 1 car had won that race, right?
Yeah. And so there's a balance there, though, with the note taking, because Armin, I think he had like 40,000 notes for his sections. I mean, it was completely over the top.
Yeah.
It was like every rock was identified, the entrance, middle, and exit of every turn. And his co-driver during a pre-run, he would be note taking like crazy the whole time. He never even look at the course because he's just riding, and then he'd be up all night long transcribing the notes into the GPS. And so the workload was unbearable at that point. And so Martin has developed a balance to where you still have the detail you need, but not to the crazy degree that Armin was used to doing rally in Europe, which is just unbelievably detailed.
Uber detailed. It's gnarly. And to the point where it's a different discipline, and it's a really, technically, I believe it's the highest discipline of off-road racing, because, you know, you're really only racing yourself and it's so mental, right? Mm-hmm. So it was interesting to see that transition, you know, and then to see that effect of not just what they had done, but then, you know, a bunch of drivers. I mean, I personally sent quite a few of them to Tim O'Neill's rally school, and then now Dirtfish and so on. So that changed off-road racing and changed the note style. I mean, I know BJ Baldwin has a methodology that's derived from that as well. So do a bunch of other of the drivers, but no, that's really cool. So
yeah, well, and then the contrast is we go to a NORA race and there's no pre-running, there's no course marking, and they give you everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, good luck. Here's a note package that works for Class 11 cars and trophy trucks.
Yeah, which I don't know how that works.
You just have to decipher it. You know, a dip could be something that you don't even slow down for in a Class 1 car, or it could be a ravine that will absolutely kill you. And so you have to drive with a level of care so that, you know, if it's a section you haven't been through recently, like you have to just kind of always hold back a tiny bit to make sure that you're not going to crash. And the same thing too is you have to watch out for local traffic, because it's not like a score race where there's pre-runners running around for a week and everybody knows Saturday is race day. In that race, it's basically a rally, but it's kind of wide open. And so nobody necessarily knows that you're coming through at 100 miles an hour on this graded road with no markings or anything. And so if you're first overall, you have to be very careful, especially if you don't have a helicopter. But if you're further back, you can push a little bit more.
And have you done NORA before?
Yes. So we're going to NORA this weekend. It'll be our fourth time doing the 1000. Last year we won it in Class 1, and we got third overall against Steve Menzies, the winner, and Larry Rossler, who got second. So it's a very competitive race. They're really fun because it's 6 days of racing. It's 1,400 miles this year, but you know that the stage is only 50 miles. So like sometimes they're longer. The longest one's like 180 miles, but then you have all night to work on your car. Yeah. So if you have something that's kind of falling apart or you have to limp it, it's only for a short time. And then the next morning you can have your car brand new, ready to go wide open again.
Yeah. It's a really cool format, and, you know, makes for a lot of fun and a lot of like, camaraderie, because you're not just starting and finishing and then you're like, oh, we got to go home, right?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. You get days down there with your whole crew, and you get to hang out and camp or stay in these different areas that we're usually flying through in the middle of the night in a Baja 1000. And so it's really cool that we get to spend more time with it. And the pitting is not under a competitive situation. We're not using pressure pros. We're using, just little drum pumps and stuff, and changing tires in a transit stage rather than a full race stage. So you don't have to have as many crew members either, because you could it's a more relaxed setting.
Do you like, I mean, you were just talking about the fact that you're going back to racing buggy and short course in addition to desert racing. Is there one that you like better than the other one?
As far as desert or short course? Yeah. I like them both. But generally I do prefer the desert overall, just because you get in the car for such a long period of time. And I do enjoy the endurance factor. If you're doing a mid 400, I don't remember my time. It was like 7 or 8 hours consistent, like nonstop in the car.
Yeah.
And I like that. You know, I like feeling like, okay, I know I'm getting a little bit tired, but I can keep my pace going, and I know everybody else is feeling the same way. Or they may switch in another driver, but they may not have the same level of experience on the course as me. So like I like the endurance factor to be, I want to be tougher than the rest, and that actually comes into play. Whereas short course, it's not a factor. Short course has its pros, like the intensity, the fans, the TV coverage, and stuff like that. And the high level of pace that you have to push the whole time. I do enjoy that.
Sure.
But desert, I like driving race cars, so I like to be in it as long as I can.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And, you know, a lot of people that do both, you know, say, hey, I enjoy both for all different reasons. It's not the same thing over and over again. But yeah, desert racing gives you hours and hours in the car, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, of the races, is there a desert race or a short course race that you absolutely love?
Well, I did like your mint race very much. I mean, the fact that you guys promoted it at such a high level, and you guys put so much into the like TV coverage and the Fremont Street experience. The whole thing was really fun. I mean, it's funny. You look online and there's people whining about every little thing all the time for all racing series, but those usually aren't the people racing. For me, I come to your race and I felt like the people there running the series were super helpful and fun. And I felt like we had a great experience at the Mint. So the last time I did it was 2015. And so coming back to it, I was like really, really happy because we had obviously a successful result, but also as a team, we had a really good experience there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, are there other races though, like, you know, like Crandon or you know, or Baja that like mean a lot to you that you're like, man, I want to keep doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, so Crandon, that's the big one. I mean, that's the biggest thing in short course for sure. 65,000 people on a weekend at the Labor Day race. That is definitely the mecca of off-road for short course. And so if you can win, I really want to win a Pro 2 race at Crandon, would be a big deal. I won the Pro Buggy versus Pro Light Cup last year, which was huge. But I want to win a Pro 2 race there. And then obviously the Baja 1000 is the granddaddy of desert racing. And so I really, really want to I don't know what the timeline is, but that's a bucket list goal of mine, would be to win a trophy truck race in Baja.
Yeah, it's a tall order nowadays. I mean, I think it's really cool. I agree with you. Like being able to go, hey, I won the Baja 1000 overall is pretty much top of the food chain in off-road. And, you know, it's funny because I was just talking to somebody about the differences between, you know, the Baja 1000 win and Dakar and, you know, even versus the Mint 400, right? Like there's so much that goes into it. It's really, you're racing these other races to get ready for the Baja 1000 in Mexico, right?
Yep.
And, you know, you've got to have everything wired. And now, you know, with all the top trucks being Mason 4-wheel drives, it's like, you got to start there, right?
Yeah.
Like now you need a 4-wheel drive vehicle that's, you know, competitive. Although I will say that, like, I was really impressed with Rob Max. Was it third place finish in San Felipe in the new 4-wheel drive Jimco? So that does show you that, like, there are other builders out there coming, you know, moving up that ladder. But it's interesting, you know. Again, it just takes a ton of logistics and, you know, and all that. So your shop is not too far from us. You guys are over in San Marcos, right?
No, actually Temecula.
Oh, okay.
Our company, Champion Metalworks, is a structural steel fabrication and sheet metal business. And we have a race shop in the corner there, which is pretty busy right now because we have the trophy truck, the Gloss 1, the Pro Buggy, and the Pro 2, all getting ready for various different events coming up. But yeah, it's fortunate we're pretty close, and we've comboed it up with our business because a lot of our guys who work on the race cars also, we send them out on projects from time to time to help with structural steel work.
Do you think that like racing and working together like builds camaraderie?
Yeah, most definitely. All our guys, we're great friends. I mean, everybody on our team is like a passionate racer. They're not just guys who show up and, you know, it's their job and they get their paycheck and whatever. They're like super into racing. And we've kind of, like, Steve Barlow runs our metal shop, and he's he comes from a racing background. He didn't have structural steel experience, but we knew he's a good person, super smart, and not somebody who's going to fail at anything we throw at him. And so when my dad wanted to start this new venture, he said, Steve, you're doing a great job running many aspects of our team, but I'd like to refocus you and get you in on the construction side. And that's something my dad has a ton of experience with too. So he's mentored him along with that. And then we're successful with that side too.
Yeah, that's right. Steve's such a great, he has such a great mind for racing. A lot of experience in short course, a lot of experience in desert,
Yeah. We have a lot of, like, on my team, I would say secret weapons.
Yeah.
We don't have a huge team. I mean, you go to see Vildosa in Mexico, they have 120 people all wearing red. It's very impressive, but we do it more, instead of a giant quantity of people, we have people who we work with very closely, and we have a fairly small crew, but they're all, like, Steve Reeder does our engines on the LS side and pretty much everything we run. And he just works for us. He's an engine builder with a ton of experience over, from the 90s on, but now he works for us. And again, he works for our general contracting side of the company. And then he builds our engines in his garage, and we're performing at a really high level because rather than buying an engine from a shop that's just, one in 100, he's making sure that one is whatever's going in our car is absolutely the most perfect he can make it. And we've had success with that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I actually, worked with Steve during short course years of core, and I learned a lot from him, really smart guy. And, he's actually, a lot of people don't know this, but I believe he was the first Red Bull athlete in North America.
Yeah. Steve Barlow started in Pro Truck with the Red Bull deal, and it's funny, he likes to tell people that I was the first Red Bull guy, and it's totally true. I mean, he was the first one that they really jumped into racing at all. Whether it was, he started with desert, and then he went into the short course stuff, and he raced with Ricky Johnson for quite a while and ran his program, and had success with that, and that's really how Red Bull got into motorsports.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was a cool era because everything was new, and we were trying a lot of new stuff, and a lot of it, worked. Some of it didn't work, but Steve's a really smart guy. Glad you have him as part of your program. But that's what I mean. It's funny. It's like you see these programs that have success, and a lot of times, you're just like, oh, it's Bryce Menzies, and you don't know who those guys behind him are that are critical to his success, from his co-driver to the guys who prep his vehicles to the vehicle builder and all that kind of stuff. Because it essentially takes, a little army to go desert racing, especially short course racing is the same, but desert racing for sure, you've got to have an army behind you of people, volunteering their time, as well as, some paid staff. But yeah, it's amazing the amount of effort that goes into desert racing. Yeah.
And I give Bryce a lot of credit. We're buddies, cause I bought his Pro 2 and we've hung out over time, but I give him a lot of credit. Like, people say, oh, he has a big budget and that, you can do anything with that, but that's not true. I mean, it's what you do with it to get the right key players on your team and put everything together, because there are other people with big budgets like Toby Price and the McMillans and Amputias. I mean, it's all about who you have in your corner and what you're doing to get the truck as dialed as possible. You have pit crews that are like IndyCar teams, and then you have to also drive the truck, at an extremely high level. And so I give Bryce a bunch of credit,
Absolutely. I mean, he's a hell of a driver, super knowledgeable. Hey, give his dad a lot of credit too, because
he's super involved. Yeah, that's a cool thing. Is like, it's kind of like me and my dad, is they really get along well, and his dad's really involved with the deal and is super passionate about racing. Steve's an awesome guy. Yeah,
no, Steve is an awesome guy. He's contributed a lot to the evolution of off-road racing, and another guy who just he's not looking for any credit,
right?
But has a lot of passion and dedicates a lot to the evolution of this, so it's really cool to see.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, it's great. And so then this year, your plan is, you just finished, second at the Mint 400. Now going forward, you've got short course racing coming. You got Nora this weekend. What else do you got planned for this year?
That's most of it. So then we have your California 300 in October. So we're going to do a major tire test with Yokohama in between now and then. And so the truck came back in great shape from the Mint 400. And Yokohama said, all right, we have a little gap in the schedule. Let's go do 300 miles basically of race pace testing and see, how this new tire that they're coming up with performs, because they're always trying different new specs and trying to continue to develop their tire, which is already really good, but they're trying to absolutely be the best in the business. And so we're going to do a test, and then we have the California 300. And then after that, our plans are kind of open for the 1,000. We're hoping that perhaps we can race with Cameron again. He has a lot going on, so it's not something that we're really talking about at this point, but we had a great experience last time, and I think hopefully we could do a little bit better this time. So hopefully we can work something out and do the 1,000 together. Yeah.
So, Yokohama has a long history in off-road racing, both in short course and desert, right? And, they've built a fantastic product. They continue to evolve it. And I know they're putting a lot of resources behind the 40-inch tire for the trophy trucks. What's that been like for you to be a part of that testing evolution?
Oh, it's been wonderful, because it was like 2.5 years ago we got on Yokohama tires on our Class 1 car, and I think Class 1 cars put a lot of abuse to a tire because the engine's in the back. They still have quite a bit of horsepower, and we got those things and we're like, man, they're working really well. And they said, we're glad you're satisfied with them, but how can we continue to improve? And so it's great for me to be on board with a company that's continuing to develop. And they have engineers at every single race, and they're taking our tires back after and analyzing them and seeing how they held up. And so it's really nice, because they're also a sponsor in the Champ Off-Road Series. So they really are behind everything I do, and they make a great product. Because there's nothing worse than a sponsor with a product that you can't win with. Whereas with Yokohama, we're already at a point where their 40-inch tire is, in my opinion, the best in the business, but they're also still continuing to try and get it to be, the most durable, the best traction, the best tread life. They're really pouring it in right now, which is pretty cool.
Oh, it's great to see, their commitment to off-road racing. I think for, people out there listening to this, like, it's important to understand that, like, you get sponsors and you want their products to be something that contributes to your actual performance, right?
Yeah. Well, it has to be in that case. I mean, it's the only thing that's your car is actually touching the ground. And so if we didn't have really good tires, it would be a huge disadvantage. And so we raced the Mint. We had one flat. I think everybody got at least one flat.
It's a brutal course for that.
It's pretty hard for a guy like me to go around and not hit one rock throughout the race.
Yeah.
And so, we had one earned flat. And then the rest after that, it was just, we were wide open, just kind of rolling the dice on those things. And they came back every pit stop. They were still in great shape.
Yeah, that's impressive. The Mint is a hard course on tires, but the Barstow race actually is, I didn't think we could find a course that is harder on tires, but the California 300 definitely proved that. And it's just the embedded rock there. It's, you get wheel spin, and you're going from like loose material right to embedded material. It's like you can't make a surface worse.
That cheese grater, sort of rock material.
And then you go look at it, and it's like, it looks like somebody made this to flat tires, right? It's just like jagged rock, and there's ruts on the side with jagged rock sticking out. I'm like, oh man, right?
Yeah, I'm a moto guy, so it always blows my mind how you'll come into something, down in Baja, and it's almost like somebody set up the rocks to try and throw you on the ground, because it's like, I avoided this one, but there's one over there, and there's one over there, and so it's like you come into these things. It's crazy how these obstacles end up being, and obviously Barstow's like the gnarliest with it. So I feel confident going into that race because we have Yokohama on board.
Nice. Well, that was great. Before you go, I want to give you, I don't know if you've gotten any of these Dirt Coast socks, but there's the American flag version. They'll change your life. They're made of bamboo, antimicrobial. We made them specifically for off-roaders to wear, especially during pre-running. So
fantastic.
The first pairs of me for free. After that, you'll become addicted.
I think I will. I love bamboo socks because they're just so comfortable and they don't smell. So I'll be trying these out, and thank you very much. I'll probably get some more.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming. That was awesome, Dave.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
All right.